Hello, all, and welcome back to a new episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are going to be reviewing the much anticipated film, The Devil Wears Prada 2. And we are joined by a very special guest. Saleah is joining us to talk about this film today. So, Saleah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jen and Sarah, for having me on. I'm excited to join you guys for the podcast. My name is Saleah, and I live in New Jersey. I work in New York. And actually, just like the character in Devil Wears Prada, I'm a journalist. So this will be interesting to dive into.
Yeah, I'm curious about some of those parts around the journalism commentary and the state of the industry that I'm sure you have feelings and thoughts about. So that'll be fascinating. All right, so Sarah, kick us off with a summary for The Devil Wears Prada 2.
Andy Sachs reunites with Miranda Priestley as they navigate their careers amid the decline of traditional magazine publishing.
All right. And in Movies Nest tradition, we start off with our one-sentence summaries for the film. Saleah, as our guest, what is your one-sentence summary for The Devil Wears Prada 2?
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like mine is more of a summary, but I will go ahead and say like what I'm thinking. I feel like it sounds very similar to just like what the synopsis was, but I put 20 years after Andy's first stint at Runway with Miranda Priestley, the fashion magazine is grappling with the decline of print media, advertising revenue, and challenges with leadership changes. And then I put also tech billionaires in parentheses.
Yeah, got a few of those in here. Nice. I love it. That's very comprehensive of a lot of what's cooking in this. So I love that. Sarah, what is your one sentence summary for The Devil Wears Prada 2?
Mine is, get in, losers, we're saving journalism.
Nice. That was awesome. My one sentence summary is a win for kindness in corporate and shared carbs everywhere.
Aw, that's very sweet.
All right. So before we dive into our thoughts about Devil Wears Prada 2, I think we should start with, were we fans of Devil Wears Prada, the first one that came out years and years ago? And kind of like, what was our sentiment going into this being the new sequel that has been made for kind of this iconic film from the 2000s? So, Saleah, what was your relationship to The Devil Wears Prada before seeing this second film?
Yeah, no, I was a huge fan of the first movie. I loved it a lot. When I first watched it a long time ago, I actually rewatched it before I watched this movie too, so it was just a little bit more fresh in my mind. But I really loved it. I think it was one of those movies where I felt like it was such a huge like turning point from I was supposed to say Miranda Priestley, from Meryl Streep's career, and just like the way it felt like it did feel like, obviously there's like some stuff about that movie where, you know, there's some problematic themes and it's very toxic with some of the themes, but it did also feel very of its time, especially with the media, like fashion journalism in New York, you know, things. So it felt very, you know, great. But I really loved the first one. So coming into the second one, I'm usually really hesitant on sequels because a lot of times I'm like, do we need it? Like, is this necessary? But I just love the cast so much that I was excited to see the cast again. But I think like for the movie itself, I did have like lower expectations coming in, just because I'm always like, what are they going to do with the sequel? Like, what can they do to expand the story? Just because I love the first one so much. So.
Sarah, what about you? Relationship to Devil Wears Prada beforehand?
Yeah. I have seen the original, you know, a number of times. We recently rewatched it and reviewed it with Clarissa on the pod, so that was really fun. And it's so interesting revisiting that film as an adult and realizing just how problematic it is. I'm like, whoa, I watched this when I was a teenager and thought that this was kind of okay, and it is not. So that was really fun to just like revisit and be in like the mid 2000s magic of the movies, but then also going, wow, we have come a long way as a society when it comes to a lot of things. And I, like you, Saleah, I had very low expectations for this sequel. I think especially after rewatching the first film and seeing how it ended, I was like, we don't need a sequel. Why are we doing this? Like, how are they going to make this make sense for the team to get back together? But I mean, you get Meryl Streep
Yeah.
and Stanley Tucci, and I'm there. So, like, that was enough for me to be like, okay, I'm curious
Yeah.
enough to go see this.
Yeah, yeah. I, like the two of you, was also a huge fan of The Devil Wears Prada. I grew up on like 90s, 2000s movies, like rom-com coming of age movies that were so iconic, and kind of it was the golden age of that style of movie. And The Devil Wears Prada really holds up well in like having a lot of emotional depth. Like it's a very good movie. The pacing's really tight. The emotional like arc that we go on, the character dynamics are really, really well done. Sometimes some of those 2000s movies like don't hold up at all as like an adult watching them, while still showcasing a lot of the problematic parts of these industries. I went into The Devil Wears Prada 2 grumbling like you, Saleah. I'm like, can we write original stories? Like, why we're playing with nostalgia? It's gonna make a lot of money, and it just feels cheap to me to just make more sequels that are lower quality of things that are already very good. Like, why? What's the point? So I went into this with like really low expectations, thinking that they might just like butcher this pretty badly, and just like you get the same cast together, but is it gonna be good though? And I was really skeptical going in, which then leads us to, how did The Devil Wears Prada 2 ultimately land for each of us? So we all kind of went in like, you know, eyes narrowed a little bit, like, I'm not sure about you, but did it work? Did it not work? Sully, I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, so I did like it. I liked it way more than I thought I would. Again, kind of talking about how I didn't have super high expectations coming in, even though I knew that the cast would probably be great. Again, I never doubt Meryl. I'm like, I feel like she wouldn't sign on if it like at least wasn't a little bit of like, be at least a little good. So, but I was still just kind of like, not sure. But I did like it. I really enjoyed it. I didn't love it. I do want to preface by saying like I don't think that like it wasn't as great as the original. I think it's hard for a lot of sequels to be better than the original. But I did like it. There were parts of it I really enjoyed, and it was like a fun own watch. So I did like it, and I'm glad I did, because I think I would have been sad if I didn't like it. It was also 2 hours long. I would have been like, this is disappointing. But I liked it. I had fun and I enjoyed it. So I liked it way more than I thought I would.
Nice, nice. Overall, it delivered on what it needed to do. It sounds like
Yeah.
for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sarah, I'm curious where you landed on Devil Wears Prada 2. Did the sequel do what it needed to do for you?
So I'm of like two minds when it comes to this film. I think as a sequel coming out 20 years after the original, it does what it needs to do to play on the nostalgia. And that's very fun. You see a really good cast back together again. And that's just fun to watch. Meryl being amazing, as she always is. Like, you're going to have a good time watching that. I think when I look at this just as a film, it doesn't work as well for me. I think there's a lot of plot points that I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense. But okay, I'll go with it. And like that happened over and over and over and over and over again. So I was kind of like, I wish that this was written a little bit better. I think it's trying to touch on these really important themes, but they get a little bit muddled over time. And there's some things with the ending that didn't work for me either. So I had a good time watching it because of the nostalgia factor, but I think looking at it critically, I'm like, I wish that this was better than it is. But Meryl's great. So I had fun watching her be Miranda Priestley. So that's a win.
Yeah, and you can kind of tell the cast is having like just a good time to like
Yeah.
be back in this world and like relive the time again. They also all look incredible. Like
Me
everyone is
too.
glowing somehow, which I,
Yeah.
when I first saw all of them on screen, I'm like, everyone looks so incredible and just having the time of their life. So love that for them. Um, yeah, I would say overall it was solid. Like in the grand scheme of what sequels can hit on a range, it's very hard for it to be like the Top Gun Maverick where it like hits it out of the park. Most sequels you expect to be just like lackluster, and this one was like better than most sequels, I would say. It captures a lot of the same spirit of the first film, a lot of the great cinematography moments of like the long panning shot of Andy walking down the streets of New York. Like we get a lot of those that make us feel like we're back in the 2000s again. Um, my favorite part of this film is what they do with Nigel's story arc. I thought that was like really emotionally cathartic and really meaningful, and had a lot to say in this very like cutthroat capitalist society that we live in. So that was like really delightful to see. I think the moments with Miranda were maybe my least favorite. I think they like turn her into a little bit more of a caricature in this film, and some of that intensity that she has in the first film, I feel like was a little bit more lost because of how they wrote her character, who's much softer and warmer and more personable in this film, which maybe is not what I was looking for. I wanted to see her double down on like that cutthroat mentality and see that be where they kind of intensify her character. So on the whole, kind of mixed bag. Solid overall. It was a really fun time. My theater had an incredible time with this. I saw this at 9:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning in LA, and people were clapping at the end. People were laughing the whole way through. So this is definitely the crowd pleaser that I think the team wanted this to be. All right. So let's give a spoiler alert. If you haven't seen The Devil Wears Prada 2, go check it out. Go watch it in theaters. It's a really fun watch. Like bring the whole family. It's a good time with your friends to go see this. You'll have a great time. And then come back and listen to the rest of our conversation because we're diving fully in. So I'm curious, maybe we could start with what were some of the like notable decisions that the film made that you found most interesting? Like of all the directions they could have taken a sequel to The Devil Wears Prada, what was maybe surprising or interesting to you? Saleah, I'm curious your thoughts on kind of the where The Devil Wears Prada 2 lands.
Yeah, no, that's a great one because like there were some stuff that surprised me about the movie and like what they decided to explore. And I think I agree with what some of you were saying, or maybe it was Sarah that you said that it kind of feels like some of the storylines felt like not all of it worked. It did feel. I will say that the movie did feel like it was maybe a little bit bloated or overstuffed. So with like the way it was trying to explore just different it just felt like they were trying to explore way too many storylines in the movie. But the one thing that I felt like really stuck out to me and resonated with me was the fact that they actually did decide to explore the decline and like the collapse of media and journalism and how that's such a big thing. It did actually feel very reflective of how I would say how media and journalism feels like in New York City right now. And I work in New York City, so this did feel like a little, almost like an oddly too real. Like in some ways, I was like, this is partially a horror movie, maybe for me and maybe other journalists like my other friends who are journalists have seen it and we're like, this is a little too, this is maybe a little too much of a documentary, actually. But I'm actually glad that I mean, I do feel like the movie, like it does, because it's Hollywood. I do feel like a lot of it does tend to get a little bit glossed over, which it makes sense. I don't think people would want to watch like a real movie where they want to see like media and journalism actually falling apart. But I think at the beginning when they actually explore that stuff, like them opening the movie up with Andy getting laid off, I was like, I've been laid off multiple times. It was like, this is a little too triggering for me. But I'm actually glad that they decided to not completely shy away from that and actually poke fun at it. Like that was probably the one thing that I was surprised that they actually explored, and probably the one I think thing in the movie that to me felt the most resonant, but then also in ways made me really emotional because I'm like, I feel seen even though this is kind of triggering to me. But it was just also, I was actually, it did feel very, again, like I said, reflective of how the media and journalism industry feels right now, and like how print magazines feel, like how they're kind of grappling with this decline, and shift into the digital and like media and like online world. So yeah, I think that was the one thing that just like really really stuck out to me and resonated with me.
And I love that this, big sequel that, we've been looking forward to for 20 years tackles such an important subject too. Like the fact that journalism is declining in the way that it's being gobbled up by like tech billionaires and all the things that this film touches on, like that's really important. And so the fact that they would weave something like that into a fun movie like The Devil Wears Prada 2, I really really appreciate it. Because I mean, how many people are just like going about their daily lives talking about the state of journalism and why that's important to our lives. Like, no, I feel like the normal masses are not talking about those things. But a film like The Devil Wears Prada 2 could start conversations like that. So I think that that's really important that they went this route when they didn't have to.
I especially love the moment in the film where Andy's written an entire article that she poured her heart into, and it's long, and then she gets feedback from, I think it's Stanley Tucci's character or someone in the office that's like, yeah, but like, are people going to read that though? Like, they're just going to keep scrolling. And how is that going to be portrayed in a short, like, couple second clip online? And later you see that there is a character, Lucy Liu's character, that does read her work and is like, I love that there's gravitas, there's a point of view. And so it is this reminder of like, there's actually so much meat that is written into long form communication that is being probably like pushed to the wayside a little bit more now in favor of short content, but perhaps it allows us all as the audience to reflect on like, the trade-off we make is that we're losing so much of the substance of a point of view that is carefully laid out and poured over with craft, instead of just a 2 second clip and grabbing an attention that way. So it was neat to see that like little mini arc of like, she's initially like scolded for putting too much time and effort into her work, because it's not fitting the like attention economy that exists right now. But then later on, she's actually rewarded for that and recognized for that. And so I thought that was really a great thread line throughout, and maybe allows us to like reassess how we consume information, and take a little bit more time and allow the patience to build for longer form communication that's just harder for the general public right now to consume.
Basically, the PSA is we all need to read longer things, and it's beneficial. Thank you, The Devil Wears Prada 2.
Yes, yes. And
Right.
I and all my other journalist friends and coworkers would definitely always appreciate that. So I feel like, yeah, that was, like I said, it just felt like, yeah, even some of the stuff that you were talking about, Jen, where that is something that I feel like in the last few jobs that I've had has been something that a lot of newsrooms grapple with, is like that shift to social media and like, how do you get actual people to read your work? And yeah, some of those scenes I was like, this is making me cringe in a way that it is actually real. And but again, it's nice that they actually made that all those elements of the movie feel accurate, because I have had, I'm not going to put like any of my former employers under the bus or anything, but I've definitely had kind of similar conversations where, people will say like, oh, this was a great story, but it didn't get enough clicks, or maybe this one didn't drive enough traffic. Or I've heard, former colleagues where they've had, to figure out a story that, could generate more clicks better. And that's obviously that's coming from, not always like the person who's editing you, but just, the higher ups, is kind of the movie explores too. So yeah, there's definitely some scenes there where I'm like, yeah, this does feel like maybe more of a documentary than it does an actual
Yeah.
like fictional movie, or at least those elements of it. So yeah.
I love that. Well, I love that you have that experience being so steeped in that industry and can watch this film and attest to the fact of like that those dynamics are so real right now, and that shift towards like these trends or these patterns, and the way that like the success rewards of this industry is shifting and changing from quality to consumption, and can kind of like resonate perhaps a little too close to home watching that on screen. One of the things that I think for me as someone steeped in like big tech and corporate that really resonated, that was woven into the film as well, that I really appreciated, is how the cutting down, the layoffs, the restructuring that Runway faces, with the management consultants coming in and just like completely obliterating departments for the sake of like the bottom line, really hit close to home. And especially when we see how the tech billionaire funding is the thing that ultimately is driving these creative decisions for this medium that is so respected and regarded, is it all ties back to the money. And as like oddly like hopeful this movie ultimately is in the end, of like the earnestness of these characters to save their company was successful, it's like quite a cynical film and showcasing like, you got some young dude who knows nothing about this that will waltz in and think that he's doing what's best to make more money. And that is the decisions that will get made. And that's the risk that these characters are up against. And there's something about that for me watching this that hit really close to home, being in big tech, in seeing like a wave of corporate layoffs with AI and just like completely removing departments. That was almost like my documentary moment of this film, The Devil Wears Prada 2, hitting really close to home as well. But I really love that they are kind of unafraid to showcase that. They play it up to be kind of comedic, but it is kind of steeped in reality as well.
Yeah, I loved that. I think again, like this fun blockbuster film taking the time to like shine a light on these very real things that are happening in our world today, I think is like super important. But I think that's one of the reasons why the end didn't like fully
Mm.
work for me, is it was just, it was so happy and so cheery, and everybody wins and get what they want because Lucy Liu is a good billionaire. Like I just I struggled with that because so much of the movie is, it's fun, it's spritzy, it's a good time, but it's also like, hey, these are real problems. But if you just have a good billionaire, then all of your problems are solved. And I'm like, I wish that there was a little bit of grit in the end, or like somebody didn't get all of what they wanted. And I
Mm.
think that conversation between Andy and Miranda in the car is supposed to be some of that, of this is like a temporary fix, and like we can't both, be in our roles for like, I think that was supposed to be the like slightly negative part of it, but I don't know. I wanted a little bit more of a negative ending to this film, but that's probably me. It is a blockbuster film, so we all want to feel good walking out, but I was just like, really? That's the solution, is find a
Yeah,
good billionaire. Okay, I'll
no.
keep that in mind.
I think I actually agree with you because I felt the same way in that it did feel like everything got, and again I did come into this knowing like, okay, this is the Devil Wears Prada movies have always felt very light and breezy, so I knew in coming like this is going to be fine, I'm sure it'll end fine, and it ended happy, even though a lot of it did have that kind of, like I said, like as we are kind of talking about, like it did have that like cynicalness of like, well, this is where media is going, this is where tech is going, you know what I mean? But like I did feel like, yeah, it felt maybe a little too like fairy tale like, right? Like how it ends. Because that was my thing. I actually think one of my friends, I think like one of my friends after, because I saw it a little bit earlier than some of my like friends and like other people here, but like I think like one person texted me and they're like, God, if only Lucy Liu could come in and save, our publication or something like that. Like, right? And yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's like, it would be great if some billionaire that was Lucy Liu could like save all of print media, but yeah,
Mm.
no, it definitely felt like, it was just like a little bit too perfect of an ending. But even then, because it's like, it's like with this cast, especially with characters like Nigel or Andy, like of course you want to see them, continue to succeed and do well. Like you don't want them to have like a horrible like ending or life. But I get what you mean, where it kind of felt like maybe there could have been a little bit more of like, yeah, I think I also wanted maybe just like a little bit more of like that kind of like you were saying, maybe a little bit of grittiness or maybe something left open, like, this isn't like completely perfect. And yeah, maybe there was a little bit of that in the car because I think Miranda alludes a little bit to that when she's talking about how, they're obviously talking about the memoir that Andy ends up not publishing or the book that she ends up not publishing. And she's talking about how like, oh, she might just have like a few years left or whatever. And then I think they were talking about how they weren't even sure if, Sasha Barnes was um, going to give them as much control as they, because there could be a future where, she ends up not
Mm.
being a good billionaire and she could be just as evil as the other billionaires. Like, we don't know that. But at the same time, it's obviously supposed to be wrapped up in this like more optimistic tone.
Yeah, it's interesting to compare to the first film where there was a real cost at the end, and there was that grittiness because the kind of arc of the first film is how much will Andy compromise her sense of identity and her morals and her values for her ambitions and for this life that she's leading. And I think the ending of that film, which I was shocked by rewatching recently because I'd forgotten about it, is her sitting at a coffee shop with Nate having to repair the damages and the effects of like emotionally abandoning that relationship in pursuit of this big fancy smash career and like compromising herself. And you feel the weight of like they reconcile, but there's a lot of wounds to be healed. There's a lot of bonds to be reformed, and that's the like dose of reality in the happy ending of that film. With the hopefulness of like they will do it, but it's going to take time, right, for them to repair that relationship. And this one, there isn't that same like, gosh, having gone on this journey, something was cost along the way, and while they did triumph and they earned it, something was given in order to like earn that emotional catharsis of the win of saving Runway. And I thought they were starting to get at that with the whole Miranda memoir, and it being another example of, will Andy choose to compromise again for the sake of money, which she needs right now? Will that money be useful for saving Runway, and like her justifying that in some way? But they kind of just like hand wave that away a little bit at the end. And I would have loved to see a little bit more of that like internal turmoil of like, I care for this person, but also like I want to write this book. Then like, what do I do? Will I choose to honor the person over the expedience of being able to just like publish something and become famous for my own selfish ambition? And ultimately, her choosing Miranda would have been like another character growth moment, another character like defining moment of Andy's learned and she will choose the right thing now. But they hand wave that away because Miranda's like, write the book, which was like, I actually like on a like a from a different angle love the moment where she says they should know the cost of what it takes for me to have built this life. I thought that was a really great like moment, kind of debunking the whole like boss bitch mentality that we have now of you can do it all. And then like for women, there is a cost, and like for her family, for her was a sacrifice for the life that she's lived. Um, so I was feeling so mixed in that scene. Just like on one hand, I kind of love this. On the other hand, I'm like, oh, we're just gonna hand wave the whole book thing away because that was like kind of really interesting.
I know. That's how I felt too. And it's funny because like it was such a good, that was one of the moments too where I felt like it was such a strong like where it like from the like an acting standpoint, I was like, oh, there's Meryl again. Like it's just such a good like this is a Miranda like a Miranda, even though it wasn't like a oh the vicious Miranda we're used to. It was just like another great like acting showcase moment from Meryl. But I think I agree that yeah, like it's almost like with the book, I kind of wanted like I feel like they tease it so much throughout the movie. Where it's like, is it gonna like she's like sending pages to her like former coworker, and it's like, is this gonna happen? And it ends up, you know, like you said, it kind of gets you know, it ends up not happening with there. But I did like, yeah, the car moment was an interesting one in that, like, I think it really showcases like how great of an actress Meryl Streep is. But for the characters, yeah, I think I did also want more, and for it to like lead to more than it did in the way that it ends, for sure. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can we just talk about Meryl Streep though?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, she's incredible. Holy cow. Like she's so iconic in the first film. There are so many just absolutely perfect line deliveries, looks. Like she is vicious without even having to say a word in the first film. And so it's like, are they going to be able to do that in the second? And there are some like really brilliant Miranda moments in this film that Meryl absolutely kills. So I don't know. I was so happy to be like back in this world, even though we get like a softer version of Miranda. I was just like, I don't even care. It's Meryl Streep. I'm having a good time.
Yeah, no, I'll watch Meryl Streep in everything, in anything. But I do agree, and I know that Jen, you were talking a lot about it, but like how her before with like how her character, it feels like she's obviously like a different character. She is definitely a softer character, and I thought that was interesting because I was also mixed on it, where I'm like, oh, I wish we
Mm-hmm.
got more like Miranda Priestley like one-liners and like zingers of her being like this, you know, like a cat with claws. But she still had those moments. I think like one line in particular that was my favorite was obviously the big reveal with like Emily, and she's like, "You're not a visionary, you're a vendor." And I remember that got a couple of gasps from like, and I was like, "Oh God, Miranda's back!" Like that was like maybe the one moment in the movie where
Yeah.
you really like see her kind of come back. And her like Mirandaness, but you know, like that's maybe like one of the few moments that we get um, from it that are that kind of mirror the first one. But I agree, it's interesting because yeah, I think I was mixed on it, where I did want to see like most of that, but I did also feel like it did feel like the way that Miranda was portrayed in this sequel is it did also feel a bit reflective of like the world that they kind of live in. I mean, I think so, or that we
Mhm.
kind of live in, especially with media and like how everything is um changing. And it seems like it was
Mhm.
also like they were trying to show that like, oh, Miranda doesn't have as much power as she did in the first one, because you see obviously with like BJ Novak's character and like all the consultants that kind of come in, like they're the ones that are um like kind of have this power over her. And I feel like that's the way they kind of showed it. And even some of the like, I know a lot of it were kind of like gags and bits, like where you kind of see her going through like first class and she has to sit in economy and like when they tell her like, oh, we have to save money on traveling, but then also like the whole bit where it's like, oh, she's hanging up her own coat now because of HR. So you kind of see how, like how there, it does very much show like, oh, well, this world now, it's like, I think it's kind of funny because it is reflective of that. Like, well, now people are
Mhm.
willing to call those things out more, and she can't like act the way that she did in the first one. So it also does feel like maybe one of the reasons they showed that is to show that like, how does Miranda function in like a world now like this, where people are more like where this generation is willing to call that out more, where she doesn't really have that much power. So I thought that was interesting because it seems like even though it was kind of seen like a comedic light, that it kind of plays at that a little bit too.
The whole bits where she's getting like scolded by HR in the meetings, and Miranda's just like, "What? It is what it is. Like I have to say it, Like I thought that was so fascinating. And you're right. Maybe my personal desire is to see Miranda at the height of her
Yeah.
powers, but that's actually, yeah, not necessarily maybe true for a 2 year, a 2 decade period of time that has passed, and corporate looks so different now. And so the there was like a almost a tragedy, I guess, in seeing Miranda no longer able to wield her power like a dictator in this place anymore. And that's part of the emotional like arc perhaps that we go on with the film, is that Miranda's losing a grip on everything. And maybe I just didn't want to see that because I wanted
Yeah.
to see
No.
her just reigning like the queen that she is. But the 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 whole journey she goes on is basically like, who am I without this, and how do I hold on to something? It's almost like watching your um, favorite like singer no longer able to dominate the way that they were because they're getting older, and the realities and the stamina is just different. And that's probably like a more grounded way to write her character, instead of like her still just at the height of her powers.
I think they also had to soften her a little bit because she's not the villain in this. I don't think she's the villain in the first
True.
movie either, but in
True.
this one she is part of the team that is working together to save Runway. And so you can't have her being, just like the uber boss that she was in the first film if she's going to be part of this like plucky team that's going to find their billionaire to save their jobs. So I think that's also smart from like a story perspective. You couldn't have that same Miranda trying to work together to save this. So plus it's nice to see a character grow every once in a while. We love that.
I did not want that. I wanted her to just be like toxic as hell, just reading people to filth, taking them out. But you're right. It's
It
right
would be
because the
fun though.
real villain is actually Irv and his son, and them wanting to take apart this industry with their like money funded power. I'm curious y'all's thoughts on speaking of money and power, Benji's character and the whole relationship that Benji and Emily Blunt's character have, and kind of her story arc and what they do with her in this film. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I mean, I feel like it was another plot point that was like they're trying to be very relevant of like the whole tech billionaires thing, and like just like obviously tech billionaires taking over everything. I like overall though, I feel like it did feel like parts of that were a little bit rushed for me. I thought Jason Thoreau was funny. At first I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I was like, it just like seems a little too ridiculous, but there were parts that I thought were really funny with his character, like his portrayal of this ridiculous billionaire. And I get that it was supposed to be this like crazy portrayal, but it did feel like some of it. I don't know. I feel like that storyline didn't work for me like fully. Like even though I totally get why they wanted to have that as like another part that they kind of, satirize and like poke fun at. But it did feel like at the end, it did feel very rushed, even with the reveal with like Emily being the one who wanted to like buy Runway so she can run it. And like, obviously it's like, yes, they're trying to fill this like store this whole like 20 years, like, oh, what happened, why is Emily not at Runway anymore? And like, I get that was like, they just need to fill that like hole there. And like, why she's
Yeah.
suddenly working as like an advertiser at Dior and stuff. And like, yeah, but it did feel like that part was just kind of like pushed in towards the end, because I feel like we get that in that third act, is like when we have the Emily reveal, and then obviously throughout we find out that she's with Benji. And so I feel like that whole storyline did feel like it was maybe not as much the focal point for the movie. And it did feel like it was like a little bit rushed more to just kind of throw in this thing of like, here's this tech billionaire, we're going to make fun of tech billionaires. So I feel like that storyline, while I think it's good that they're, that they decided to kind of poke fun of that too, I did feel like maybe it didn't fully come together for me, just because it did feel like maybe it was like a little bit thinner or like rushed when it came to maybe the writing or the exploration of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I thought that Justin Theroux did a really good job, and like,
He's funny.
I don't know, I maybe it's just the things that I've like watched him in, but I feel like a lot of times he's like this like love interest kind of character, or there's like, even if he's like a weird character, there's like a heartthrob like undercurrent to it. So like, to see him being just this like gross, ridiculous tech billionaire, I loved that. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, be weird, my guy, do your thing. But I totally agree. I think it didn't feel as integrated with the story as I think I wanted it to. It kind of felt like out of left field. So I like what the film is trying to say. I don't think that they got there in a way that felt coherent with it. And so and this is just kind of how I felt about the film in general. I wonder how this script came together and over how many years, because it felt kind of just like disjointed to me throughout. There's a lot of things that like, it didn't feel like a cohesive piece. It felt like something that was created and kind of puzzle pieced together. And I feel like the tech billionaire part is just part of that. And then I'm kind of mixed on the Emily reveal of her kind of being a bad guy and want to take Miranda's job from her. Like, I'm like, I kind of love that, because Emily Blunt, I feel like, is just a tremendous actress, and it's fun to see that side of her. But also I'm like, I kind of like Emily the character. Like, even though she's like mean, total toxic, mean girl in the first film, is kind of a terrible person, there's something about her that I find endearing. And so then like, to see her in this film just ready and willing to screw over Miranda Priestley, I was like, I wanted a little bit more there. Like, I needed like a deeper motivation, I think, for her to want to do that to somebody who led her for so long, was her boss for so long, taught her so much. I don't know. I think I needed a little bit more there if Emily really was going to take that step and stab Miranda Priestley in the back. So I don't know. I was a little mixed on, honestly, a lot of things in this film, but that being one of them.
I think one of the things that's so endearing about Emily's character from the first movie and into this film is that she's a character that clearly wants something and is unafraid to voice her passion and her desire for something. And I feel like we just love characters like that are kind of fearless and saying like, I really want this. This was my dream, and is willing to go for it. For most of the time, most of the film, I didn't love what they were doing with her character. It really clicked to me at the end where she has that conversation at the coffee shop or the cafe with Anne Hathaway's character, where Anne Hathaway is essentially identifying that everything that Emily has been wanting, all of her actions, even dating Benji, was her attempt to self-actualize in the way that she knew how, which wasn't to believe in herself, but to find someone who could wield power for her to achieve her dreams. And I feel like there's something interesting there around showcasing this version of being a woman in society and looking to self-actualize in the ways that you feel like you can. And if she had that insecurity and wasn't sure that she could do it herself, like she's seeing that her next best option is to find someone with power and be able to use that to her advantage. She's never been interested in Benji the whole time. That's clear to us as day, right? So we're just like, that is one path. And Andy's encouragement for her is like, you have what it takes. Like, go do it. Like, believe that you have what it takes. And so I feel like if we'd seen that through line a little bit more clearly throughout the film, that would have been really meaningful as a counterbalance to the Miranda and the Andy characters that have that earnest belief in themselves versus, and contrasting that a little bit with this other female character who maybe isn't sure of herself but still is desiring to achieve her dreams, and her walking through that in a kind of like roundabout way through dating this guy and ultimately realizing at the end that she's got what it takes. I think that would have been a really interesting counterbalance and kind of showcasing this kaleidoscope of like existing as a woman in society and chasing your dreams and all of the different pathways that you have available in front of you to get there, and which ones are true to you and which ones maybe you don't need to take and traverse. So there's like, it's like the seeds of it are there. What we actually get is kind of crazy and kind of whack, but I love the essence of it. So I wish we would have like had that written a little bit differently because it's so good at its heart.
Yes, and Emily has some really great lines too throughout this. So like she's such a fun character. We just want more for her. We want better for her.
Same. She did have. I agree. I feel like that was one thing I think with Emily, but then even just all the characters, it did seem like they slipped so seamlessly back into character. Like as soon as you see Emily, like when they go to the Dyer office and they're about to have that meeting, and she sees them, and it's like, yeah, like it's great. They just like so easily slipped back into these characters as if it was like no time passed. And I think we all kind of agreed, like, yeah, they all look amazing too for 20 years later. So it's like, yeah, it's almost like, and that was like one thing too, though, like, and it seems like it's more of a right, like, because I think with the actors, it's like they all did such a great job. They came into the movie like got back into character so easily, but like I think with some of the things we're talking about with some of the storylines maybe not feeling as full or flushed out as they could have been, sometimes it did feel, and I think maybe with the Miranda and like Emily storyline, it did feel like because this is essentially a sequel where all these characters are reuniting, it did feel like maybe they were trying to force some of these storylines for it to be like these are the way the characters' lives are together. And I feel like that's something obviously this is not just this movie, but I think a lot of sequels and a lot of maybe shows where they try to reunite characters where it seems like maybe the storyline feels like it's a little bit like forced to make the characters be in each other's lives, even after like say 20 years or how many years passed. So I think that was definitely, I think I agree with like the Emily storyline, but I did really like when they did have that, which I know Jenny were talking about a little bit, but the lunch with kind of that final scene with Emily and Andy, I did like it because I think one of the first things from the first movie that I really loved was obviously when Andy gave her the clothes from Paris, and they had that like phone call. And part of me always wondered. I did actually even like every time I watched that movie, the first one, I'm always like, it would be cool if we had like a longer moment with Andy and Emily like after all of that happens. And I feel like that was kind of the moment that we get. And obviously that's also a testament to how great Emily and Anne are as actresses, and it's great to see them on screen together. But I think like as characters, it was nice to see them have this moment where it didn't just end with them like never speaking to each other again, or like it ended on bad terms or something. Like I am actually glad that we had this like moment with them.
That scene was so well written too because it's so sweet, like it's everything we wanted for their female friendship, but it's not written too sweet as well. Like it kind of hit the right balance because Emily's obviously sharp tongued, and she's snarky, and so even her expressing certain things is her way of like showing her care, but it's done in a very Emily way. So when Andy's like reaching out her hand to be like, let's be friends, she's like, yes, I'm down for that, but I will not touch your hand. And I loved how they captured the essence of that so well too. So just tonally really worked because wasn't too saccharine, it wasn't too sentimental, it was the right amount, and just warmed our little hearts and sent us off into the rest of our day.
And one other thing I was gonna say, I don't know about if you're, and you can tell me if it was the same for you, but if the audiences cracked up during the line when Andy was just like, so how are things at Coach, is like the first thing she said. like what to I think because I think that
Yeah.
was the first thing she said to like start off that conversation, and it got so like even so when I saw it the first time, when I was at the premiere, that got so many laughs, and then when I saw it again last night, that also I think was the one that got the most laughs from people, was Andy just being like, so how are things at Coach?
My theater did too. Well, the irony of that is, which is maybe Sarah, you're saying that this might have been written a couple of years ago, because the irony is that Coach is like way cool now with the young folk, like
Yeah,
like it's back in trend now. It's not Dior, it's not the prized
yeah,
like luxury brand, but like it is not the like faded out, washed up brand that only moms wear now. Like all the young kids are like, this is cool now. Coach is cool, which was news to me like a couple months ago. I do not follow any of the trends, and I was like, oh, I thought that was what my mom wore, but apparently Coach is now back in. So fascinating to see that. Like, well, I don't know how this will age, but will Coach be like a legend in like 20 years, and everyone watching that won't get that line anymore? I don't know, but we do today. My theater loved it too.
Okay, so I feel like the other like heartwarming thing that we have to talk about is Nigel, our guy.
yes.
Let's chat about his storyline. What did we all think about that?
Yeah, no, I loved what they did. I feel like Nigel was always kind of the heart of that those characters, at least even the first one. And also it's Stanley Tucci. Like how do you not love him? But I am glad because we do have obviously I think the biggest part is that moment because obviously one of the biggest moments in the first movie is the one where Miranda essentially doesn't give him the job that he so dreamed of and like, wanted, and then they kind of talk about it a little bit throughout the movie. Like I think Andy is like, oh, like when they were talking at the party about how things are going, and at that point Nigel's like, oh, she's Miranda's done this to me like so many times, like versions of it. I think he says like through the past like, whatever 20 years since we've last seen these characters, and at this point it kind of seems like he's just like used to it and he's accepting of it, and he's just like whatever. Like I have my job, I'm working with Miranda. I'm at Runway. I love being at Runway. But then we have that moment in Milan where obviously when Miranda and Andy leave so that they can go save Runway, she lets him have his moment finally. And I love that. I actually almost wish though that they would have made that longer. Like I wish we would have actually seen the speech. And I get that the movie was already long and that there were other things, but I feel like they could have cut something else out for us to have that longer Nigel moment. Which I'm so glad that we have that because like obviously we know where it's going and we see the start of it. We have that moment with Miranda and Nigel where she's obviously apologetic and they're talking, but I do wish we would have seen like more of the speech aside from just like the intro of it, because I'm like, this is his moment. I can't believe they took that away. I wonder if there's like a deleted scene out there where they like have it because I don't know. It's like I feel like we needed that like Stanley Tucci like moment of him to actually say what he needs to say about Runway because he wrote the speech. But I do, really loved that we got that moment regardless. And then actually one of the scenes that made me emotional where I like was like tearing up and almost started crying was at the end when you find out that he was the reason why Andy came back to Runway. And it was just one of those things where when they revealed that and he's like, my girl or whatever, when he says that, I was just like, I definitely started getting teary eyed because it just kind of also reminded me like you always, like as long as you have one person at a job, no matter how bad it is, that's like watching you or looking out for you, it's like that's all that you really need. And Nigel was always that person for Andy. So, yeah, I feel like Nigel was just like, yeah, he's like to me has always been the heart of this group, and these characters and of Runway. And so I'm glad that we did have a very like strong Nigel like storyline here in this movie.
Dude, my eyeballs were sweating in that scene at the end there for sure. I was like, why is healing a part of me too that's just been so like beat and battered by corporate that is so like it's depicted in this franchise from the beginning into now is can be so cutthroat, dog eat dog world. Everyone's looking out for themselves. Everyone's going to backstab you when you least expect it. And to know that there are the Nigels in the world that are looking out for you, that are creating opportunity for you without you even knowing it, that are advocating for you. healed a little bit of part of me, and I think it's the film is able to inspire us as the audience members as we go back to our jobs to be that for someone else too, and to really look out for them. Um, and in a lot of ways, like you could argue, this is Nigel's movie because the whole movie kicks off with a decision that he makes to get Andy into the door and to create opportunity for her. So I love that Miranda comes around and like everything that Nigel's sewn into this job, every time he's been overlooked, it almost feels like it's beginning to be redeemed a little bit more by finally being recognized. And he's so humble in not advocating for himself. To be seen in that way was healing for him, but to see that he's been so generous all this time, was so beautiful to see. So my eyeballs were definitely waterworks were going. It was very good. So I'm testament to like no matter all the story arcs that aren't really maybe fully tight in the Devil Wears Prada 2, like they nailed some big key emotional beats, and anything that can get an emotional reaction out of you is working in some capacity for sure. So loved that bit. Sarah, what were your thoughts about the Nigel story arc?
I mean, I love Nigel. He is probably my favorite character in this franchise. He's just sassy and wonderful. And yes, I am a very negative person. So I did not see that little bit at the end in a positive light. For me, I was thinking that this film was trying to say something about like women coming together and like supporting women and like kind of in like that vein, and then to find out that it was actually like a dude that got Andy the job. That's where my brain went initially, was like, this is like a feminist, like women empowering women kind of film, but then it was a dude that got her the job. So like that was the track that my mind went down during this very lovely and wonderful heartfelt moment. So that's what's wrong with me as a person. But yeah, just love Nigel. So glad that he got a chance to shine in this. And there are some good iconic Nigel moments as well, but then you also see those like softer, humble moments from him too. And we just love Stanley Tucci and he can do no wrong. And so I'm glad that they wrote enough in here for him to also be a focal point instead of just like a supporting role in this. So it was just fun to see.
Oh, so good. Nigel's finally getting his flowers 20 years later. Incredible. Other things we wanted to shout out and mention before we wrap up. I've got probably like one main thing top of mind, but curious what other folks have.
I think the one other thing I wanted to say was like I actually enjoyed a lot of the cameos and like the maybe there were like maybe a little too many, but I was the ones that I did see that I liked. Like I loved that Lady Gaga was in the movie. I just love Lady Gaga so much that I'm like you can put her in anything and I will be happy. I will cheer. I feel like she fits perfectly into the runway world because it's Lady Gaga and she's like iconic and she's very fashionable and stylish. And so it makes sense. I think there was an interview I read where the director had said something like when they were trying to figure out what pop star or something to put in the movie, like Lady Gaga was the only one that made sense. And I'm like, that absolutely is like accurate. Like, I think like she fits perfectly into like the Devil Wears Prada universe. So it was fun seeing her. I also really loved like out of the new, because like there were a lot of new characters that kind of were added into the cast this time around, and one that I really loved was Simone Ashley, who played the kind of new Emily. I also really love Bridgerton, so I was just very happy to see her cast in something else, where her role was like a little bit, I was like, wish we saw her more, but I loved her, like the moments that she was in, I really loved like the addition of her. So like kind of these new characters and these cameos that we had, I thought were all really fun. But I think the Lady Gaga cameo was one of my favorites. And then I think Simone Ashley from kind of the new cast additions. I just wanted to shout her out because I thought she was really great. And she's obviously just like so pretty. I was like, every time she was like on the screen, I was like, she's gorgeous. I love her outfits. Like you put her on the screen more.
Well, and she does such a great job in that assistant role too. And like she is not drawing attention away from Miranda, but she's always there hovering in the background. But she's also giving her all in that performance too. So like there's so much there that she's doing. She's doing such good work in this film. So I was also just struck by her and just thought that she was a really good addition to this. And also to see how the Emily role has changed over the
Yeah.
last 20 years, but also stayed the same. I thought was really fun. Um, one like big complaint that I have about this film. I'm sorry,
Right.
I'm this
Do
person.
it.
Yeah, I want to hear.
Pretty much all of Andy's big choices I didn't understand. They didn't make sense to me for this character. So that was what I was like, wait, this doesn't make sense, but we have to do this for the movie. So even
Yes.
like her initially going to work for Runway, I didn't buy it. I'm like, I don't know that I would go back to such a toxic workplace unless I was like super desperate. And I didn't feel that level of desperation for her yet. Like I needed there to be something else. Like she was in like a ton of debt and she needed to do this, or like she had been looking for jobs and been unable to find anything. And then Runway comes. Like I needed a little bit more because it kind of seemed like she lost her job and then the next day she gets this new job. And I was like, why would you go back to Runway? That doesn't make sense. But she needs to be back at Runway for the movie to work. So it's fine. And then like her buying this apartment that she can't afford. I
my
was
God.
like, why are you doing this? This
crazy.
makes no sense. You were just laid off and lost everything. Then this thing parachutes in and you think this is going to last forever to pay for this fancy apartment. That doesn't make sense. And then even like her wanting to save Runway, I was a little skeptical of too. Like, obviously she's doing good work and is finding fulfillment in that, but I don't know, like I didn't fully buy her wanting to go all out just to save this. So I needed like something else there. So there were like all of these moments in the film where I was like, Andy, this doesn't make sense. So I wish that the film had like added in just a little bit more to all of these things to make me like really buy some of these choices that she's making, because she is our protagonist that we're following through this. And all throughout the movie, I was like, I don't understand what you're doing.
Yeah. Can I actually say a few things about that? Because, like, I do have some things I thought about, which I do agree with pretty much everything you're saying. Because, like, obviously, I feel like Andy is a character, like, we're supposed to love her because, you know, she's obviously, like, we're rooting for her. It's Anne Hathaway. But I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying. And I think a lot of it is more just, like, I'm seeing it from a journalist perspective, because she would do some things that kind of drove me nuts in this movie. Like, I think some of it, and it seems like it might be a little bit too, like, I know these are like probably things that maybe like people who are watching the movie would be paying attention to, but like me as a journalist, I'm like paying attention to is she did like a little thing where she was like writing directly into like the CMS, which is like the system that journalists write into, instead of like writing it into a Google Doc, which would drives me insane. I actually know some other journalists who have done that, but like for me personally, I'm like, I wouldn't do that. So that drove me nuts. Also, she like never like recorded her interview. She was always just like writing them in her notebook. So there's just like little things as a journalist that I was like, no, what are you doing? You've been a journalist for years. Like, you just won an award at the beginning of the movie. Like, why are you not doing these small journal? So it was like, even though I obviously, like I was saying, I appreciate the overarching like exploration of like journalism and how I do feel like in ways this is a love letter to journalism, I was also like, but our main journalist is doing things that like are driving me crazy as an actual journalist. And then also like when she like lied about getting an interview with Sacha Barnes, I was like, oh, I would not do that. That would is like something I would never do, like as a like ethics thing. That, which obviously she does get the interview, which like, you know, which she was always going to get that interview just because that's like the way the movie was going. But the fact that she like lied to do it, I was like, no journalist, or at least no journalist that I know that is a like ethical journalist would do something like that, even if you were desperate. So yeah, little things like that drove me nuts in terms of the decisions. And I agree with you. I'm like, as nice as that apartment is, I was like, there's no way that I would even be able to afford an apartment like that. So even working at somewhere like Runway. So yeah, those things like that were also to drive me a little bit crazy. So
I don't know why they did the whole apartment thing, actually, because it doesn't add that much to the plot, but especially if you're focusing on this industry that is hard, that people give up a lot for to be in because they care about this. Like, I love in the first movie that they're living in a place that they're trying to afford because they're chasing their dreams. So I'm like, Homegirl must be working in finance or something, because she's got like a skyline view of the water, like a corner apartment that's massive in New York City, which is just, I'm like, yo, what market are you living in? Because that's not what anyone can afford unless they are making bank somehow. And so that was a little unrealistic too. I love that we didn't even mention her love interest character because he's just kind of irrelevant in this movie.
Yeah,
I'm like,
exactly.
yeah, whatever. So random.
Yeah.
Quick little shout outs. I wanted to give a shout out to Lady Gaga. I thought that was so interesting. I love that she got enough screen time to do her performance and do what she does best. I thought it was also fascinating because it's part of a show that is showcasing the connection between fashion and Italian culture, and kind of the intersections between art forms is really interesting. And that's something that Gaga's been on one lately about, with like music is theater and theater is music, and like kind of the intersections of art. So felt very in line with what Gaga's been all about these past couple of years as well. I really appreciated going back to the car combo scene with Miranda and Andy. It was really nice to see Miranda say so clearly, I like to work. I like working. That was just not something that we typically see in media, is a woman who is the top of her craft and like acknowledging the trade-offs she's made, but also voicing that her passion is paramount and she's given her life and chosen that, without all of the guilt and shrouding and whatnots that I think is often depicted in media with trying to sell this narrative women can have it all. So it was just like shocking and surprising and so delightful to see Miranda Priestley say, I like to work and I love working, with a huge smile on her face. So that loved that. Cerulean sweater at the end that Andy's wearing in the final scene. I thought that was like a great nod to the first movie. She's doing it her way now. She's staying true to herself and like taking a prop that is so iconic, like the Top Gun Maverick bomber jacket, and bringing that in again. It's great fan service and also just sentimental and symbolic. So it was like a very obvious. It's not, nothing about it is like subtle, but it was just like sweet and heartwarming to see. So they're playing with those visual ideas. It's cool. All right. Well, this was our review and discussion of The Devil Wears Prada 2. I would say we did a good job, like kind of showcasing, like celebrating a good amount of things that we thought they did well and like landed the plane on and was pretty solid in, and some things that were like, yeah, it's a sequel. It has the impossible task of like having to do this thing. I do not envy anyone that has to figure out how to write a sequel, and so they did a decent job with it, with some qualms that we have as well. So thank you, Saleah, for joining and sharing all of your thoughts as well for this conversation about The Devil Wears Prada 2.
Thanks.
Saleah, where can people find more of you and follow you, connect with you more on the interwebs?
Yeah, I feel like I'm everywhere. You can find me on Instagram if you want to keep track of what I'm watching. I'm on Letterboxd. Also share a lot of my stuff on LinkedIn. I'm still kind of active on Twitter and Blue Sky, but I feel like I'm most active on Instagram. That is usually my handle for that is just my name, Saleah_Whiteflower. And my Letterboxd handle is Saleah. And yeah, I think I was like, what are my handles? But I'm pretty sure you can find me if you. I've said this before, but like I also write for a lot of different places as a journalist. So maybe some of the main places I write are Gold Derby, Fast Company, Inc., writing a lot about kind of the business of entertainment and advertising and a lot of different things in kind of this world. So yeah, you just find me. Yeah, there's not a lot of Saleahs on the internet, so I think maybe you could probably Google my name and maybe something will come up. So
perfect. We will include links in the show notes too, where you can find Saleah and all that goodness on the socials, on Letterboxd, and more of her work as well. So yeah, go check her out, go follow her, go connect with her more. All right, well, another sequel in the books for the movie industry, and one that was pretty well done. Go watch it. It's a fun time. Good time at the movies. Go get popcorn, go to snacks, with all of the expensive like prices that are there right now, which is insane. But we'll be back here on the feed soon with more movie reviews. Hope everyone has an amazing week in the meantime, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Movies and Us. We are part of the Movie Archer podcast network, so check out moviearcher.com to learn more.
Our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories.
You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating review letting us know your thoughts about today's episode.
Connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Movies and Us Pod, or email us at moviesanduspod@gmail.com. Check out our website, andusmedia.co, for the latest on Movies and Us and our other podcast, TV and Us.
We hope you have an amazing week, and we can't wait to see y'all very soon.